Thank you. Oh, wow. Janie, thank you. How wonderful to take the stage from you. That's got to be the best introduction I have had. I am really having fun at NowCab. It is wonderful to get shout outs, Noel, from you. It's wonderful to have members. And let me just say, this is the only conference I've ever been to where there's fresh jalapenos on the breakfast table. So I am home. I am feeling great. So thank you. OFN and NowCab share 22 members, and it's truly an honor to consider this a sister network. So I really look forward to reinforcing ties between us so that we can be stronger in advocating for Latino-led CDFIs. And in that spirit, I want to structure our time together a little differently. I will speak, promised you, Mike, but I also hope that you speak and that we, at the end of this, have a little more of a dialogue. People have been asking me what am I going to talk about, and I am really inspired today to actually speak about owning our American dream. Owning what it means, owning it as ours, and owning the CDFI mission to create a path to assets for all communities. Because I believe at our very core, OFN and NowCab are in the fight for the American dream, the fight to make it accessible for everyone. Our weapons in this fight are home mortgages and loans for citizenship and DACA renewal applications. Our weapons are small business financing and affordable personal loans and savings accounts. We fight with education and training and coaching. And I think we're going to take a pause so we can get this right. This should go up? Okay. Yeah, we're in a fight for this American dream. And I think that this is the fight that we have all felt called to be in. I use the word because the phrase American dream is in fact tricky. It means something different to everyone. For some, it's buying a home. For others, it's building wealth or opening a business. The dream can be earning a degree. And the American dream can be citizenship. But for me, the beauty of this phrase American dream is its very amorphousness. It's the fact that we can each define our own version of the American dream. That's what makes the dream more than a fixed goal, but a fundamental value about what America stands for and what is possible when opportunity is just and equitable. As many of you know, I have a particular perspective on the American dream. I see it through the eyes of an immigrant daughter. As some of you know, my dad is from Ghana in West Africa. And he immigrated here in the 50s before the country was independent to go to college at Oregon State. He barely knew about it. He was hoping there were cowboys there. He took this journey as an immigrant to get an education. And his intent was to help his country, to go back and change the country where he was born. Didn't all quite go that way. He ended up marrying an Iowa farm girl with a German background, my mom. And they ended up staying in Oregon, where they raised me and my sister and brother. And so I say with some irony that I think of my parents as the quintessential American couple. After all, they were two people born into families from elsewhere who made a home in the United States. My father's Ghanaian roots are very strong. I lived there as a child, and I've visited many times since, and I've gotten to know my cousins. And for many of you in this room, I'm sure, who might be first generation as well, or who have immigrant parents, you know about this sense of guilt, actually. Maybe you didn't do enough. Maybe you weren't able to give back because it's so hard here. And what I took from being a first generation kid is that I've always amazed at how much we have here in America. That's partly where the guilt comes from. Trips to Ghana remind me that America offers profound opportunities that people in Ghana just don't have. It's opportunities to move up, to move up a ladder and define dreams, to make choices. But all of us who've been first generations or who can see their immigrant roots not too far back understand that this ladder, it takes resources to actually move up and seize those opportunities. We're well aware that resources are not easy to come by, and they're not easy, especially for people of color. As advocates for our communities, our work, I see it as righting this wrong, to bring resources where they don't exist, and to move people from poverty to holding assets. I want to quote Frederick Douglass, who said that with money and property comes the means of knowledge and power, that every dollar that you lay up represents one day's independence, one day of rest and security in the future. Now, Frederick Douglass was saying those words about 170 years ago, and he was talking about assets as a way out of slavery. And in 2018, nobody knows his truth better than we, the CDFIs and others who represent individuals and communities who know how important it is to get those assets as a way of freedom. I actually chose to be part of this movement, and I'm leading OFN now because I believe so strongly in the power of CDFIs to bring communities to wealth and to property, to this American dream. As Janie mentioned, I've been championing CDFIs and the asset building movements since the beginning of my career, first in banking and then at community development in the Ford Foundation. And in a very real sense, I feel like my journey is a very shared journey with NowCab. I want to tell you a story about what it felt like to go to the Ford Foundation in 1989 when I got there. And at that time, asset building was really just beginning to evolve as an actual named strategy. We talked more about poverty reduction, about community development. But there were folks like Martin Eakes of the Center for Community Self-Help in North Carolina. And at that time, he was just starting to grow self-help, and he kept pushing the Ford Foundation. It's a note, keep pushing the Ford Foundation and others, because he kept pushing. He kept pushing on this notion of community development. And he kept saying, reducing poverty and developing communities takes assets. Don't forget that. You got to be after the wealth gap. And Martin would say, not enough. You got to get after wealth, especially in communities of color, and particularly around home ownership and access to responsible bankings. Because Martin understood that you couldn't get real change and development until people owned something, until they owned their own homes or their businesses and land, until they had savings accounts and other assets. And he eventually won. Ford took an asset building approach to its funding. And when Ford made this switch, I got the nickname of being the asset person. Martin's fight was my fight, and it's indeed the fight that gathers us here at NowCab. As Janie mentioned, I moved from Ford to Aspen and went on to help create programs that helped people build savings and wealth. And then I had the great privilege of serving at the Department of Agriculture, working for areas of our country in deeply rural places that desperately need assets, and where the hard work of rebuilding rural America happens. And now I couldn't be happier to be at OFN, championing our member CDFIs and remaining in this fight for the American dream. Now I want to acknowledge that this American dream fight is just not easy, and that me and everybody else can feel like it's a fight that at times is just unwinnable. The demands for capital in this country are more than we at this moment in time can possibly meet. And when I start feeling about how monumental our task is, I have an experience that reminds me of just how much CDFIs matter. So my experience was in Texas last week, and some of you were there. I got to visit 3 of our CDFI members, Lift Fund. I then went on to CDC of Brownsville and to Affordable Homes of South Texas. And if you guys haven't visited all 3 of these, you need to. Just become inspired. Because in their stories, I was reminded again of how important it is to have community development financial institutions fighting for this American dream. When I got to Lift Fund in their offices in Houston, I learned about really what's happened to Lift Fund over the past few decades. It has been a story of growth from this micro-enterprise model. And Lift was very flexible with this model. This is what I love about CDFIs. They started out with the peer lending model, more inspired by Grameen and their other Axion partners. But then they used different approaches to get to scale. And scale they have made. Since 1994, Lift has originated nearly 20,000 loans. That's nearly 300 million to small business owners. 50% are Hispanic or Latino. I learned that Lift likes talking about impact. And they like saying that out of the 6 years of lending they did with 127 million of loans, they created 1.8 billion in economic output. And that's a powerful number that has folks listening to them. It's great. It's really about changing lives. And I just thank you, Janie, for giving me time with your team and time to be inspired again. We didn't stop there. I went on to CDC of Brownsville on America's southernmost border. All of you Floridians who think you're the furthest south, sorry, you got beat. Brownsville is actually the most southernmost tip. Who knew? Texas, one more time, they have a first. But here in Brownsville, I saw the experience of the Brownsville CDC, really decades of practice in converting every kind of public money, and especially USDA or HUD or other sources. They have taken every dollar and figured out how to convert it into a home. And they've done this in some of the poorest areas, the colonias. It was so inspiring to hear. I heard about the Community Loan Center, the CLC program that's made affordable small dollar loans, and how these aren't just small dollar loans. They're affecting the financial and real health of people. All of us who've been trying to say, we're more than just writing economic lives and building assets. We're actually bringing health to communities. And it was so clear when I sat with the CLC team and the group in Brownsville about this. And finally, we went on to Affordable Homes of South Texas. And again, tremendous effort. Over 42 years. Some of you weren't even born 42 years ago. Think about what that means. 42 years of determined practice has meant that there are over 2,000 homes that were made affordable for families earning between $30,000 and $40,000 a year. You would think it couldn't be done, but there they've done. And it's beautiful homes that people took pride in choosing. And all of this was possible. Affordable Homes of Texas got started with $188,000 that the CDFI raised to be able to get people into a core asset of home ownership. So huge thanks to Janie and to Nick and to Bobby and your staffs for hosting me. And feel what I feel, which is deep pride in what we've been able to accomplish and deep hope about where that horizon is. And Mike, I hope it's not a false peak. I hope we get up there and we just see how much we can do. The CDFIs that I mentioned and the others that are in this room are really three in an army. You know, the Treasury has certified about 1,100 CDFIs. And this is really an army of committed institutions trying to make finance affordable and meaningful in communities that truly need this. It's great to have an army, but think about what the need is. And we're always having to ask ourselves, can this industry actually deliver the American dream to the 58 million Latinos and millions more people of color? Of course not. We can't do it for everybody. I know that, and you know that. We're a billion-dollar industry, but we're in a trillion-dollar fight. CDFI mortgages, even scaled up 10 times, it won't ratchet up homeownership rates in all communities of color. And we know this. Of course, we can't ensure that everyone gets a mortgage just by the hands in this room, but we can make sure that some get a really good product that can withstand market volatility. I'm really proud. We're the field that shows people we can go that last mile. So we can't give up on a mortgage for everyone, and we can't consider ourselves finished when this country faces home ownership rates for Latinos, which are below 50%, that we just can't give up. So while we may not be able to write all the loans, we're a beacon. That's what I really feel. We're a beacon for a job that's unfinished in America. We push mainstream finance to do better and more for all Americans. You know, think about the partners to this conference, Mike's comments. We're partners, and we're part of proving to larger financial systems and structures that America's financial system doesn't belong to any one group. It belongs to everyone. And NALCAB and OFN members are creating those financial products and services that can and should scale, but we're also pointing the way for the future. So I want to wind down a little, but I've been thinking about how we can walk together closely. And I've been thinking about the needs for capital that I've been hearing in all of the conference room. This room, Noel, is buzzing with folks who want to get practical, so I want to get a little practical. I think today's a chance for OFN and NALCAB to start talking about scaling our joint fight in the American dream. And I want to talk about the 4 different kinds of capital that I think are out there to help us in this fight. I want to start with, first, the CRA-motivated bank capital. And CRA is in the news a lot, and I want to talk about its critical place in our industry. By the OFN stats, in 2016, bank investments in our members totaled $2.8 billion. That's 54% of all of our members' borrowed capital. It's huge. And our members have turned this into $3.3 billion in dollars to lend. So they've leveraged that bank capital. These are the kind of partnerships that we're talking about with Wells Fargo, with BB&T, with Citi, BBVA Compass, Bank of America, so many other partners. But these are partnerships for capital that have helped drive our industry. It's innovative programs like JP Morgan Chase's Pro Neighborhoods that you heard about this morning that enable us to revitalize more communities across the landscape of urban and rural and native communities. This is a vital source of capital, and it is so important, and we're not going to stop fighting for that. So that's our first one, the CRA-motivated bank capital. Then the second kind of capital, and that's government money. I've been hearing about it in all the meetings this morning. Just recently, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, as they're coming out of conservatorship, wrote CDFIs into their duty to serve plans as important players in affordable housing. These mortgage giants know our value in the real estate space, and we know theirs. Fannie and Freddie are not alone in government sources of capital. There's also the USDA, my old agency. There's the Small Business Administration that I heard about today. More to be done there. There's the CDFI Fund, the agency that best understands us. I feel we are just not done with government capital. It's low cost, it's long-term, and it's essential to our work. And we should keep this firmly in our radar in our fight for the American dream. Third, I want to say is private philanthropy. And this has been clearly instrumental in growing the CDFI impact. Ford Foundation and Kresge Foundation, Northwest Area Foundation, MacArthur, Mary Reynolds Babcock, those are some of the leaders that we've turned to that we trust and that trust us to propel their missions forward. They've been the investors, and as investors, this partnership has worked well, and I don't want it to get tired. I think philanthropic capital still has a role in our future. Fourth, I think there's another kind of ally we need to enlist in the fight. And some of you know that decades ago, it was the Sisters of Mercy in Vermont and New Hampshire that invested their savings in the earliest loan funds instead of in the stock market. They were really the first impact investors. They risked their retirement to be able to connect their money with community good, and it worked. They got a return, and they did good. And this is really the core of the impact investing field that I think is the fourth kind of money for this field. Since the Sisters of Mercy way back in the 70s, CDFIs have written so many stories of creating impact through investments. I believe it's time for the CDFIs to dig deeper into all of these four sources of capital so that we can grow them and make bigger and broader investments in the people and places in the U.S. that we serve. And I really think we need to do this digging together. The better that OFN and NALCAB link arms, the stronger we'll be in this fight for the American dream. It's only by going really arm in arm, and my phrase is walk together, that we can really achieve the kind of impact. We'll find the fellow change agents we need, and we can amplify our story and make a resounding case for CDFIs to our current partners and to new investors. Now, I promised at the beginning of my speech that I wouldn't just talk, I wanted to listen. I want to go back to DC and my team and share what I've learned in the last few days with you. I want to have your voices and your stories in my ear as much as you've been hearing me. So I'm going to wrap up now, and I want to talk about some questions, but I want to leave you with one question. And I hope that this question can kind of spark a long-lasting dialogue, something that we'll keep up over this year. So here's my question. What can we do together to make Latino-led CDFIs stronger, bolder, and more impactful in our fight to own our American dream? What can we do? What can we do to make ourselves stronger, bolder, more impactful? I truly feel now's the time to do the work, and I'm in this fight with you. Couldn't be happier. Thank you.